Before we move on to the next module, let's review some key concepts from this one. Default service accounts are how projects communicate within GCP, and they need to be properly configured. Each GCP project has a default service account that is automatically created when Compute Engine is first enabled for the project. This default service account is assigned a project editor role and is used by default when launching VMs. You can also create and manage your own service accounts using the Google Identity and Access Management. Access scopes provide the ability to limit what permissions are allowed when using the default service account with IAM project editor roles permissions. You set access scopes when creating an instance, and the access scope persists only for the life of that instance. Another option is to set the access for each API individually, which allows you to grant access to only the APIs required by the programs running on the VM. There are several options for accessing machines remotely on GCP. By default, Linux instances on GCP are accessed with SSH and require a username and an SSH key for authentication. Password authentication is disabled by default. It is also possible to connect to a Linux instance via SSH using the gcloud SDK. Windows instances are accessed using RDP and require a username and password to authenticate. The username and password can be set by the GCP console or using gcloud. It is also possible to SSH from any SSH client, such as PuTTY on Windows or SSH applications on Linux or Mac computers, using the public IP address of the instance, a valid username, and the SSH private key. You can manually create your own SSH key pairs using tools such as PuTTYgen or SSH KeyGen. The Organization Policy Service gives you centralized and programmatic control over your organization's cloud resources. An Organization Policy Administrator can configure restrictions across your entire resource hierarchy. A constraint is a particular type of restriction, either list or Boolean, against a GCP service or a list of GCP services. Compute Engine best practices can help you create more secure instances as well as keep them secure. Compute Engine best practices include control access, isolation of machines, connecting securely, and regular monitoring and auditing of logs. In addition, be sure to keep instances updated and avoid using the default service account, especially if it is unmodified. Okay, we are now ready to move on to the next module.